The day the aliens came, Sarah was eating breakfast with her daughter in their small apartment in Singapore. The morning news played on the television. The weatherman was talking about rain. Then the screen went black. Every screen on Earth went black at the same moment. When the picture returned, it showed something that would change human history forever. Massive ships hung in the sky above New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, and 100 other cities. They were black as night and shaped like broken crystals. They blocked out the sun and cast shadows that stretched for miles. Sarah held her daughter close and watched as the world she knew came to an end. The aliens called themselves They had crossed the stars to find Earth, and they had come to take everything. Their leader, a creature named Orion, appeared on every screen. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that seemed to shift like oil on water. His eyes were completely black, and when he spoke, his voice was cold and empty. "People of Earth," he said through some kind of translation device, "your planet now belongs to the Dominion. You will surrender. You will obey. Those who resist will be destroyed. Those who comply will be allowed to serve." Governments around the world tried to respond. The United States launched its missiles. Russia sent its jets screaming into the sky. China fired everything it had. Every nation with weapons pointed them upward and pulled the trigger. It made no difference at all. The ships did not even try to dodge the attacks. The missiles hit them and simply disappeared. The bullets and bombs were absorbed into the black crystal hulls like water into sand. And then the aliens fired back. Beams of white light shot down from the sky. Wherever they touched, everything vanished. Buildings, roads, tanks, soldiers, entire military bases just stopped existing. In 3 hours, every army on Earth was gone. Every air force was destroyed. Every navy was sunk. The people of Earth watched their defenders fall, and they felt something they had never felt before. They felt completely and utterly helpless. In the days that followed, they made their demands clear. Humans would be sorted into groups. The strong would work in mines and factories. The smart would be studied and examined. The rest would be processed for biological resources. The aliens did not explain what that meant, but everyone understood. World leaders met in secret, hiding in bunkers deep underground. They argued and shouted and blamed each other. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Some wanted to fight to the last person. Most just sat in silence, not knowing what to do. President James of the United States was one of the silent ones. He had spent his whole life believing that America was the strongest nation on Earth. Now he knew that Earth itself was nothing compared to what existed among the stars. "We cannot win," said the Russian president, a tired old man named. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours, perhaps thousands of years. We are like ants fighting against giants." "Then we negotiate," said the Chinese premier. "We find terms that preserve some of our people. Some survival is better than none." "They don't want to negotiate," replied. "You heard their message. They want slaves and resources. We are not people to them. We are cattle." The meeting went on for hours. No one could agree on anything. It seemed like humanity's final chapter would be written in fear and confusion. Then a door opened, and a woman walked in. She was perhaps 60 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that burned with fierce intelligence. She wore a simple black uniform with no markings except for a small symbol on her collar that no one recognized. "Who are you?" demanded President. "This is a closed meeting. How did you get in here?" "My name is," the woman said. "I am the director of the Prometheus Initiative, and I am here to tell you that the war is not over. It has only just begun." The leaders stared at her in confusion. None of them had ever heard of the Prometheus Initiative. None of them knew who this woman was or how she had entered one of the most secure locations on Earth. "Madam," said President, "I don't know what you think you can offer, but we have just watched our entire military capability get destroyed in a matter of hours. We have nothing left to fight with." Smiled, It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. "You are wrong, Mr. President," she said. "You have been wrong your entire life. Your governments have been wrong for 60 years. You believed that the weapons you could see were the only weapons that existed. You believed that the space programs you knew about were the only space programs. You believed that humanity was alone and unprepared." She walked to the center of the room and placed a small device on the table. A hologram appeared above it, showing something that made every leader in the room gasp. Ships, hundreds of ships, thousands of ships. Human ships built with human hands, crewed by human soldiers. They floated in the darkness of space, hidden behind the moon, hidden in the asteroid belt, hidden in places that no satellite had ever photographed. The Prometheus Initiative was founded in 1969, continued. We received a warning that the Dominion was coming. We have spent 60 years preparing for this day, building, training, waiting. "Impossible," whispered President. "We would have known. Our intelligence agencies would have found something." "Your intelligence agencies found exactly what we wanted them to find," replied. "Nothing. We are the best-kept secret in human history. 2,000 warships, each one built with technology that matches or exceeds what they possess. We call it the Black Fleet." She pressed another button, and the hologram changed to show the alien ships hanging over Earth cities. They believe they have won. They believe we are helpless. They are about to learn that they have made the greatest mistake any species has ever made. Looked around the room at the stunned faces of the world's leaders. They woke up humanity, and now humanity is going to show them what that means. She pressed a final button on her device and spoke 4 words that would echo through history. "Activate the Prometheus Protocol." And far above the Earth, hidden in the darkness between worlds, 2,000 fusion engines began to glow. The story of the Prometheus Initiative began on a cold night in 1969, in a forest in Siberia. A Soviet patrol was walking through the snow when they saw something fall from the sky. It was not a meteor. It was not a satellite. It was something else entirely. The object crashed into the frozen ground and sent up a cloud of steam and smoke that could be seen for miles. The soldiers approached carefully, their rifles ready. What they found changed everything. It was a probe, a machine built by hands that were not human. It was damaged from the crash, but parts of it still worked. Strange lights blinked on its surface. Symbols that no human had ever seen glowed in the darkness. The Soviets took the probe to their most secret facility. Their best scientists spent weeks trying to understand it. What they found terrified them. The probe contained a message. It took months to translate, but when they finally understood it, the Soviet leaders felt their blood turn cold. "The Dominion is coming," the message said. "They have noticed your signals. They will arrive in 200 years, perhaps less. You are not ready. You must prepare." The message also contained something else: technical plans, instructions, blueprints for engines that could travel faster than light, designs for weapons that could crack planets in half, knowledge that would have taken humanity thousands of years to discover on its own. The Soviet premier at the time was a practical man. He understood that this information was too important to keep secret from the rest of the world, but he also understood that sharing it openly would cause panic. The people of Earth were not ready to know that monsters were coming from the stars. So he did something that had never been done before. He reached out to his greatest enemy. The American president received the Soviet message with disbelief. The two nations had spent decades threatening to destroy each other. They had built enough nuclear weapons to end all life on Earth. And now the Soviets were asking for help. But when the Americans saw the probe, when they read the translation of the message, when they understood what was coming, they made a choice. They chose to work together. The Prometheus Initiative was born in a secret meeting on a submarine in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Leaders from America, The Soviet Union, China, Britain, and France gathered in a cramped room and made a deal that would shape the future of humanity. They would tell the world nothing. The Cold War would continue on the surface. The space race would proceed as normal, but beneath that performance, beneath that theater of conflict, the great powers would work together on a single project. They would build a fleet. It started slowly. A secret base on the far side of the moon, hidden from all telescopes on Earth. Then another base in the asteroid belt, carved into a rock 100 miles wide. Then shipyards in orbit around Jupiter, so far from the sun that they existed in permanent darkness. Thousands of people were recruited. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, workers. They were told the truth about what was coming, and they were asked to give up everything. Their families would never know where they went. Their names would never appear in any history book. They would live and die in secret, building ships that might never be used. They said yes. Every single one of them said yes. Was born in one of those secret bases. Her mother was an engineer. Her father was a pilot. They had both volunteered for the Prometheus initiative before was conceived, and they raised her knowing that she would never see Earth's blue sky or feel its wind on her face. Did not mind. She understood that she was part of something greater than herself. She understood that every ship they built, every weapon they designed, every soldier they trained was a gift to the future, a chance for humanity to survive. By the time turned 30, she had become one of the initiative's best strategists. By the time she turned 40, she commanded her own ship. By the time she turned 50, she was chosen to lead the entire operation. And now, at 62, she stood in a bunker beneath the Swiss Alps and watched the faces of world leaders as they learned the truth about their species. "How is this possible?" President asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The money alone would be impossible to hide, the resources, the manpower." "We hid it in plain sight," explained. "Every black budget program, every classified project, every mysterious disappearance of funds that your accountants could never explain, it all went to Prometheus. Every nation contributed without knowing they were contributing. Your space programs were the cover story. The rockets you launched, the satellites you built, they were the show we put on for the world while the real work happened in the dark." Premier of China shook his head slowly. 60 years, 3 generations of leaders in my country, and none of them knew." "Some knew," admitted. "A few people in each government have always known, but the secret was passed carefully from one trusted person to another. Most of your intelligence agencies spent their time spying on each other, looking for threats that did not exist. They never thought to look up." The hologram still floated above the table, showing the hidden fleet in all its terrible glory. Destroyers with missile bays that could unleash nuclear fire. Carriers that held hundreds of fighter craft. And at the center, the dreadnoughts, each one 2 kilometers long, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a moon. "What happens now?" asked President. His eyes were hard as stone. "Now we fight. They believe they have conquered a primitive world. They believe we are helpless. They have positioned their ships for harvest operations, not combat. They are spread thin, vulnerable, overconfident." She touched the hologram, and it zoomed in on the alien fleet hanging above Earth. "In 6 hours, the Black Fleet will emerge from behind the moon. We will hit them before they can react, before they can call for reinforcements, before they understand what is happening. We will show them that humanity is not prey." "And if we fail?" asked. Met his eyes. "Then we die fighting. But Mr. President, I have spent my entire life preparing for this battle. My parents spent their lives preparing for it. 3 generations of humanity's best have given everything to this moment. We will not fail." She straightened her uniform and looked around the room one final time. "Ladies, I suggest you find a screen and watch the sky. In 6 hours, the universe is going to learn what happens when you threaten the human race." She turned and walked out of the bunker, leaving the leaders of Earth to stare at each other in stunned silence. Above them, hidden in the cold darkness of space, 2,000 ships were waking up. 2,000 crews were checking their weapons. 2,000 captains were reviewing their orders. The greatest secret in human history was about to be revealed, and nothing would ever be the same again. Ambassador Oran was pleased with himself. The conquest of Earth had gone exactly as planned. The humans had resisted, of course. Every primitive species resisted at first, but their weapons were laughable, their defenses pathetic, and their military forces had crumbled like dry leaves in a fire. Now he sat in his command chamber aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion, reviewing the harvest schedules. The humans would be sorted and processed. Their planet would be stripped of resources. Within a standard cycle, Earth would be just another conquered world, its people serving the Dominion until they were no longer useful. He allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This was his 43rd successful conquest. Perhaps the High Council would finally grant him a seat among the ruling caste. Perhaps his name would be remembered for centuries. His tactical officer interrupted these pleasant thoughts. "Supreme Voice," the officer said, using Oran's formal title. "We are detecting unusual readings from the far side of the planet's moon." Oran waved a slender gray hand dismissively. "The humans have some primitive observation equipment there. It is of no concern." "Supreme Voice, the readings are not consistent with observation equipment. They appear to be engine signatures." For the first time since arriving at Earth, Oran felt a small flicker of unease. He turned to look at the tactical display. Engine signatures. The humans have no ships capable of reaching their moon except for small transport craft. Our scouts confirmed this before the invasion. "Yes, Supreme Voice, that is why I am confused. The signatures are large, very large, and there are many of them." Oran stood and walked to the main viewing screen. He ordered it to focus on the area behind Earth's moon. For a long moment, he saw nothing but empty space and distant stars. Then the sky split open. They came around the edge of the moon in perfect formation. First 10 ships, then 100, then more than Oran could count. They were not small. They were not primitive. They were warships, massive and deadly, their hulls painted with colors and symbols that the ambassador did not recognize. The symbols were flags, the flags of nations that had supposedly been enemies for 100 years. American stars and stripes flew alongside Russian eagles. Chinese dragons shared space with European emblems. Every nation on Earth was represented, united under a single banner. The banner read, "United Earth Navy." "Impossible," Oran whispered. "This is impossible. They are primitives they cannot have." His words were cut off by the first salvo. The human ships fired as one. Thousands of missiles streaked across the void, their warheads glowing with nuclear fire. Behind them came beams of energy that the sensors could not identify, weapons that should not exist on a world that had only discovered electricity 2 centuries ago. The missiles struck the fleet like a hammer striking glass. Oran watched in horror as 3 of his cruisers vanished in blooms of white fire. A carrier, caught in the middle of launching fighters, broke apart as something punched through its hull. The Eternal Dominion itself shuddered as a beam of crackling energy carved a wound across its side. "Return fire," Oran screamed. "All ships return fire." But the human fleet was not waiting to be shot at. They moved in ways that the tactical computers could not predict. Their formations shifted and flowed like water, never staying still long enough to be targeted. Their smaller ships darted between the larger ones, drawing fire and then dodging away at the last moment. This was not how primitive species fought. This was not how any species fought. This was something new, something the Dominion had never encountered in 1,000 years of conquest. Admiral Way stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiance and watched her fleet tear into the enemy. She had been born in a shipyard hidden in the asteroid belt. She had never breathed Earth's air or walked beneath its sun. But she was human, and today she was proving what that meant. "All squadrons maintain pressure," she ordered, her voice calm and steady. "Don't give them time to think. Fighter wings, target their engine clusters. I want them blind and crippled." Around her, officers relayed commands and monitored data. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Every simulation, every exercise, every hour spent studying, tactics and technology had led to this single point in history. And they were winning. The fleet had been arranged for occupation, not combat. Their ships were spread out, positioned to monitor the planet below and support the harvest operations. They had no defensive formation, no battle plan for facing an enemy that should not exist. Human fighters swarmed around a battleship, peppering it with missiles and cannon fire. The alien vessel tried to swat them away, but the fighters were too fast, too unpredictable. They flew patterns that no computer could calculate because no computer had designed them. Human pilots had invented these maneuvers themselves, drawing on instincts that evolution had given them for running through forests and hunting prey. A destroyer group led by Captain James spotted an opening in the enemy formation and dove through it without waiting for orders. They emerged on the other side and opened fire on a cluster of supply ships that had no weapons to defend themselves. On the Eternal Dominion, Iran was losing control of the battle. His officers shouted reports of losses and damage. His tactical display was a chaos of red warning lights. Ships that had conquered a dozen worlds were being torn apart by an enemy that was not supposed to exist. "Supreme Voice," his communications officer called out. "We are receiving transmissions from the human fleet. They are broadcasting on all frequencies." "On screen," Iran ordered, though he was not sure he wanted to see what the humans had to say. The face that appeared was human. A woman, perhaps 60 years old, with hard eyes and a thin smile. She wore a uniform that bore the symbols of the United Earth Navy. "Ambassador Iran," the woman said, "I am the director of the Prometheus Initiative and commander of the fleet that is currently destroying your forces. I have a message for you and for the Dominion you serve." Iran stared at the screen, unable to speak. "You came to our world thinking we were weak," continued. "You came to harvest us like animals. You were wrong. Humanity has been watching the stars for 60 years waiting for you. We learned your technology. We improved upon it. And now we are going to show you what happens when you threaten our home." Another explosion rocked the Eternal Dominion. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. "This is not a battle, Ambassador. This is a lesson. And when we are finished teaching it, the entire galaxy will know that Earth is not prey." The transmission ended. Iran looked around at his crumbling bridge, at his dying fleet, at the impossible enemy that had risen from nowhere to challenge the might of the Dominion. For the first time in his long career of conquest, he understood what it meant to be afraid. And the battle was only just beginning. The battle had been raging for 6 hours, and they were running. Ambassador Iran had ordered the retreat after losing half his fleet. The mighty ships that had conquered 11 species were now fleeing toward the edge of the solar system, desperate to reach the jump point that would carry them back to Dominion space. But the humans would not let them go. Admiral watched the enemy flee on her tactical display. She understood what would happen if she allowed them to escape. They would return with more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. They would come back angry and prepared. The element of surprise would be lost forever. "All ships pursuit formation," she commanded. "No one leaves this system. Every vessel that retreats today is a vessel that comes back tomorrow." The Black Fleet surged forward. They had been training for this fight their entire lives, and they were not about to let their enemy escape. Captain Maria Santos commanded the destroyer Havoc. She had been born on Earth, in a small town in Brazil, but she had left her home at 18 to join the Prometheus Initiative. Now, 30 years later, she was leading her ship in humanity's first interstellar war. "Engineering, give me everything the engines have," she ordered. "We need to catch that cruiser before it reaches the jump point." "Captain, if we push the engines that hard, we might burn them out," her engineer warned. Maria smiled grimly. "If that cruiser escapes, it won't matter. Everything we have, Lieutenant, now." The Havoc leaped forward, its engines glowing white with strain. Ahead of them, the cruiser was running at full speed, its own engines burning as it tried to flee. Maria studied the enemy ship on her screen. She could see the damage from the earlier fighting, the scars where human weapons had torn through alien armor. The cruiser was wounded, but it was still dangerous. "Weapons lock on target. Fire everything we have." The Havoc unleashed a storm of missiles and energy beams. The cruiser tried to dodge, but it was too slow, too damaged. The weapons struck home, and the alien ship broke apart in a bloom of fire and debris. Maria did not celebrate. There was no time for celebration. She was already scanning for the next target. Across the solar system, similar scenes were playing out. Human ships hunted vessels through the asteroid belt and around the moons of Jupiter. Fighters chased enemy craft through fields of spinning rock. Destroyers cornered damaged cruisers and finished them off. On board the Eternal Dominion, Ambassador Oran watched his fleet die. His flagship was one of the last surviving capital ships, and it was barely holding together. The human attack had crippled their engines and destroyed half their weapons. They were limping toward the jump point, hopping against hope that they might escape. "Supreme Voice," his tactical officer reported, "we are detecting a large human vessel approaching from below. It is one of their dreadnoughts." Oran looked at the display and felt his heart sink. The UNS Defiance was rising toward them, its massive hull bristling with weapons. It was twice the size of the Eternal Dominion and showed no damage from the battle. It moved with the slow, terrible grace of a predator that knows its prey cannot escape. Admiral appeared on his screen again. "Ambassador," she said, "your fleet is destroyed. Your flagship is crippled. You have one chance to survive. Surrender now and your crew will be treated fairly. Continue to resist and I will destroy you." Oran stared at the human woman. In all his years of conquest, no one had ever asked him to surrender. The Dominion did not surrender. The Dominion conquered. The Dominion was supreme. But the Dominion had never faced humanity before. He thought about dying. It would be the honorable thing to do, the thing that the Dominion expected of its commanders. But he was tired and his crew was dying and the human ships were everywhere and he could not escape. "I accept your terms," he said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "The Eternal Dominion surrenders." On Earth, people watched the battle through telescope feeds and satellite images. They did not understand everything they were seeing, but they understood enough. Ships that should not exist were destroying an enemy that should have been unstoppable. Sarah, the woman who had watched the invasion begin while eating breakfast with her daughter, now stood on the roof of her apartment building and looked up at the sky. She could see flashes of light in the darkness, explosions too far away to hear but bright enough to see. "Mama," her daughter asked, "are those the good guys?" Sarah held her daughter close and smiled for the first time in days. "Yes, baby, those are the good guys. Those are humans." The Battle of Saul ended at midnight, exactly 19 hours after it began. The invasion fleet had been reduced to debris and prisoners. Humanity had lost 300 ships and 12,000 soldiers, but they had won. They had done the impossible. Admiral stood on her bridge and looked at the field of wreckage that had once been an enemy armada. Around her, officers cheered and embraced each other. Some of them were crying. Many of them had spent their entire lives preparing for a battle that they feared they would lose. Now they knew the truth. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was a force that the galaxy would have to reckon with. Appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from her command center on Earth. "Admiral," she said, "on behalf of the United Earth government, I thank you and every member of the Black Fleet for your service today. You have done more than win a battle. You have changed the course of human history." Nodded slowly. She was exhausted, but she could not rest yet. There was still work to do. "Director, the immediate threat is over, but this is not the end. The Dominion will learn what happened here. They will send more ships." "I know," replied. "That is why we must prepare. The secret is out now. Every factory on Earth, every shipyard in the solar system, every resource we have must be turned to building our forces. We have won the first battle, but the war is just beginning." Looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the solar system, beyond the light of the sun, an empire of 1,000 worlds was waiting. They would come for Earth again, with fleets that darkened the stars themselves. But humanity would be ready. "Director," said, "I request permission to address the fleet." "Granted, Admiral. Say what you need to say." Took a deep breath and opened a channel to every human ship in the solar system. "This is Admiral to all Prometheus forces. Today we have won a victory that will be remembered for 1,000 years. Today we have proven that humanity is not a species that bows to tyrants. Today we have shown the universe what we are capable of." She paused, looking at the faces of her crew, at the images of crews on other ships, at all the brave men and women who had risked everything for this moment. "But our work is not finished. The Dominion will come again, and when they do, we will be ready. We will fight. We will win, because that is what humans do. We survive, we adapt, we overcome, and we never ever give up." A cheer rose from every ship in the fleet, a sound of triumph and defiance that echoed through the void. The Battle of Saul was over. The war for the galaxy had just begun. 3 years had passed since the Battle of Saul. Admiral Way stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the UNS Prometheus, and watched as humanity's largest fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Before them hung a world of purple clouds and silver oceans. This was Prime, the heart of the Dominion, the capital of an empire that had enslaved 100 species across 1,000 years. And it was about to fall. The war had been long and brutal. After the Battle of Saul, the Dominion had sent 3 more invasion fleets to Earth. Each one was larger than the last. Each one was destroyed. The Black Fleet, once a secret force of 2,000 ships, had grown to 10,000. Every factory on Earth worked day and night to produce weapons and vehicles. Every man and woman who could serve had volunteered to fight. But humanity had not fought alone. In the first year of the war, had broadcast a message across the galaxy. She told the story of Earth's survival. She told how a primitive species had beaten back the Dominion's invasion. She told every enslaved world, every conquered people, every oppressed species that they were not alone. The response had been beyond anything humanity could have imagined. On a desert world called, or the reptilian people rose up against their Dominion overlords. They had been slaves for 300 years, forced to mine precious metals from the burning sands. When they heard its message, they remembered what freedom meant. They attacked the Dominion garrison with mining tools and stolen weapons. They won. On an ice world called VII, the four-armed people sabotaged the factories where they had been forced to build Dominion ships. They broke the machines, destroyed the supply lines, and escaped into the frozen wilderness. When the Dominion sent soldiers to hunt them down, they turned hunters into prey. On 100 other worlds, the same story repeated itself. Species that had been broken and conquered for centuries suddenly remembered their courage. They saw that the Dominion could be beaten, and they chose to fight. Humanity became a symbol. The young species from the distant arm of the galaxy, the primitives who should have been harvested and forgotten, had become the spark that set the empire on fire. Admiral had spent the last 3 years leading the push into Dominion territory. She had liberated 12 worlds and destroyed 200 enemy ships. The woman who had been born in a hidden asteroid base had become the most famous military commander in galactic history. Now she looked at Prime and knew that the war was almost over. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "we are detecting minimal defensive forces. Their orbital stations appear to be abandoned." Nodded slowly. This was not a surprise. The Dominion's military had been broken across a dozen battlefields. Their fleets were scattered and destroyed. Their soldiers were demoralized and exhausted. The empire that had seemed unbeatable 3 years ago was now crumbling from within. "Open a channel to all ships," she ordered, "and to the planet below." She waited until the green light showed that she was being broadcast to millions of ears. "This is Admiral Way of the United Earth Navy. To the defenders of Prime, your fleet is gone. Your empire has fallen. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If you do not, we will begin our attack. There will be no second warning." She ended the transmission and waited. 43 minutes later, a response came. It was not from the military. It was from the civilian government, a collection of officials who had taken power after the military leadership fled. "We accept your terms," the message said. "We surrender." There was no celebration on the bridge of the Prometheus. Looked at her officers and saw the same expression on every face. They were relieved, but they were also tired. They had been fighting for 3 years. Many of them had lost friends and family. The victory felt good, but it did not erase the pain of everything they had sacrificed to achieve it. "Send landing parties to the surface," ordered. "Secure the government buildings and the communication centers. I want to speak with their leadership personally." 2 hours later, walked through the halls of the Dominion's Grand Palace. The walls were carved from black crystal, the same material that had made up the invasion ships. Strange symbols were etched into every surface, recording 1,000 years of conquest and domination. She was led to a large chamber where the remaining leaders waited. They looked nothing like the arrogant ambassador who had demanded Earth's surrender 3 years ago. They looked tired, defeated, afraid. One of them stepped forward. He was younger than the others, with the same oil-slick skin and black eyes that all possessed. "Admiral," he said through a translation device, "we have surrendered as you demanded. What will you do with us now?" Studied him for a long moment. She thought about the cities that the Dominion had destroyed. She thought about the species they had enslaved and the worlds they had harvested. She thought about all the suffering that had been caused by the beings standing before her. Then she thought about what humanity wanted to become. "We will not do to you what you did to others," she said finally. "We are not here for revenge. We are here to build something new." The young looked confused. "We do not understand. We conquered your world. We tried to destroy your people. You have every reason to destroy us in return." "Yes," agreed. "We do, but that is not who we are. Humanity has spent its entire history fighting itself. We have been cruel and brutal and destructive. We know what it means to hate and fear and destroy, and we have decided that we do not want to spread that into the stars." She walked to a window that looked out over the alien city below. Ships bearing the flags of a dozen different species were landing in the streets, bringing soldiers and diplomats and aid workers. They were there, and representatives of every species that had joined the fight against the Dominion. "The war is over," said. "Now comes the harder part. Building a galaxy where species do not conquer each other, where different peoples can live in peace. It will take generations. It will be difficult and messy, and sometimes we will fail, but we will try." She turned back to face the leaders. "You can be part of that future, or you can be left behind. The choice is yours." The young stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he bowed his head. "We will try," he said. "We do not know how to be anything other than conquerors, but we will try." Nodded. It was a beginning. On Earth, watched the news feeds from Prime. She was old now, approaching 70, and she had spent the last 3 years managing a war that stretched across light years. She was tired, but she was happy. Sarah sat beside her, the same woman who had watched the invasion begin while eating breakfast with her daughter. Sarah's daughter was 18 now, old enough to join the Navy if she chose to. She was thinking about it. They did it, Sarah said, watching the alien leaders surrender on screen. They actually did it. Smiled. Humanity has always been capable of great things when we work together. We just needed the right reason to try. She looked out the window at the sky above. It was blue and peaceful, with white clouds drifting slowly across the sun. It looked the same as it had looked 3 years ago, before the invasion, before the war, before everything changed. But it was not the same. Somewhere out there, beyond the atmosphere, beyond the moon, beyond the edges of the solar system, a new galaxy was being born. A galaxy where Earth was not just a small blue dot, but a beacon of hope for every species that had ever been conquered and oppressed. What happens now? Sarah asked. Thought about all the challenges that lay ahead, rebuilding the destroyed worlds, helping the freed species find their way, keeping the peace among allies who had very different ideas about how the future should look. Now, she said, we do something even harder than fighting a war. We build a peace that lasts, and we try to be worthy of everything we have achieved. The sun was setting over Earth, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in orbit, human ships were returning home, their crews looking forward to seeing their families after years of fighting. The sky had split open, and humanity's secret Armada had appeared. And because of that, the universe would never be the same again.